Let's talk about a scenario that is, well, basically a nightmare for anyone involved in global trade. What happens when the world's most critical maritime artery just slams shut? We're going to get right into it. So, I want you to picture a single doorway. It's not all that wide, but a massive chunk of the world's entire economy has to squeeze through it every single day. Now, what do you think happens if that door suddenly becomes a solid brick wall? You see, that doorway is the Strait of Hormuz. And really, its importance boils down to one number: 20%. That's how much of the entire world's oil supply flows through this one single narrow waterway. And to put that into perspective for you, we're talking about 20 million barrels of crude oil every day. It is, and this is no exaggeration, the most critical choke point for the whole global energy supply. And in the scenario we're exploring today, set in the very near future of 2026, this is what happens when that door closes. 3,200. That's how many ships, we're talking tankers, container ships, you name it, are now just trapped inside the Persian Gulf, totally stuck. So, how did this all happen? Well, in this 2026 crisis scenario, things escalate in the region, and Iran issues a really stark warning. Any ship trying to pass through the strait is gonna be a target. And the commercial world, it reacts almost instantly. And you just have to look at how fast the whole system seizes up. On a normal day, about 138 vessels sail through Hormuz. By March 3rd, that number just collapses, down to 4. The artery is basically clamped shut. I mean, this chart just says it all. A 90% drop in traffic, pretty much overnight. This isn't just a slowdown, it's a full-on emergency stop. But the actual reason the ship stopped, well, it's probably not what you're thinking. So this is it. This is the real reason. It wasn't a military blockade that brought global trade to its knees. It was something way more fundamental to the shipping business. Insurance just vanished. You see, every single one of these giant ships depends on something called war risk insurance. It's kind of like the financial safety net that lets companies send these billion-dollar assets, not to mention their crews, into waters that might get dangerous. If you don't have it, the ships just do not sail, period. And that's the absolute key to understanding this. The physical waterway is still there. You could still sail through it. But the financial engine that powers every single voyage, it's gone. The risk became a price that nobody could or would pay. And hey, this isn't just some theory. It happened fast. Within hours of the threat, big-time maritime insurers like Skuld and North Standard P&I sent out 72-hour cancellation notices. They basically drew a big red line on the map and said, sorry, you're not covered there anymore. And just like that, the ships stopped moving. But, this whole crisis, it's about so much more than economics or insurance policies. Because trapped on those 3,200 ships, you've got a population the size of a small town. We're talking about an estimated 20,000 seafarers now just stranded on their ships inside the Persian Gulf. They are just waiting. They can't get home to their families, they can't get resupplied properly, and they're doing all this while floating in what's become one of the most dangerous places on the planet. This quote from one of the seafarers really just cuts right through all the noise. We're powerless and hoping nothing hits us. It's just a brutal reminder that while we're here talking about supply chains and cargo, the entire system only works because of the quiet courage of the people caught right in the middle of it all. Naturally, a crisis this big doesn't just stay in one place. The shockwaves started spreading across the entire globe almost immediately, and they hit everything from energy markets to the cost of shipping. The first shockwave, it slammed right into shipping costs. Over a single weekend, the freight rates for big oil tankers loading up in the Gulf jumped by 94%. Suddenly, the price of moving what little oil was still available just went through the absolute roof. And it wasn't just oil. European natural gas prices, they shot up by 80% in the days right after the disruption because all those LNG shipments from Qatar suddenly stopped. This is an economic shock hitting us on multiple fronts. You see, this whole thing goes way beyond just energy. We're talking about 44% of the world's sulfur and 31% of its urea, which you need for fertilizer, but also things like semiconductors, batteries, vital pharmaceuticals, even food that has to be kept cold. The global supply chain for almost everything is now seriously at risk. And the clock is ticking. Analysts from JP Morgan are warning that if this whole mess drags on for just 3 weeks, 21 days, there's going to be nowhere left to store the oil. Producers in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE, they'll have to start shutting down their facilities, which would just make the crises 1,000 times worse. And yet, through all of this chaos, it all comes back to the people. On the bridge of every one of those waiting ships, there's a captain doing their job, maintaining readiness, maintaining discipline, and most importantly, maintaining calm for the crew who depends on them. The anchor might be down, but their responsibility never stops. In the end, a crisis like this just shines a spotlight on a fundamental truth about our world. This whole global system we've built, it needs constant motion to survive. But the people who actually make that system work, they're running on something far more fragile. They're running on hope. Hope that the door will finally reopen and that one day soon they can sail for home. The question is, what happens if it doesn't?